welcome to today's episode of the Beauty Industry Podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry, connecting you with educational pieces, innovative industry products, and inspiration from industry experts. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Shaw. Today we are speaking with Danielle Hughes, the managing director of SkinFaktor Australia. Her career over the past 12 years in the hair and beauty industries has included roles as an Australian educational manager and national brand manager for leading imported cosmeceutical brands, and currently also includes an international role as marketing manager, using digital communications for a new-to-market European medical anaesthetics provider with patented technology. Danielle has presented at conferences and educational seminars across Australia, Asia, Canada, Europe, South America, and even Russia. So she's pretty much world dominating at the moment. Her no-hype approach is both refreshing and to the point, which I so love about Danielle. Discussing the world of epigenetics today, Danielle and I dive into how external factors have the ability to influence the way our skin looks and behaves. We deep dive twin studies, internal disruptors, product use, and more during this educational episode. From SkinFaktor, today we welcome Danielle Hughes.
Thank you for having me. It's quite an introduction.
Well, it's all your further study, and it's a real credit to your career, Danielle.
Thank you for having me on the podcast today. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. So we are talking all about epigenetics today, which I know is getting a lot of hype at the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about what is epigenetics?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a big topic of conversation within the industry, but it's also, I guess, it's been around for quite some time. I think within the skincare industry, we're kind of cottoning on to the fact, okay, can some of the things that we use on our skin actually affect the way that our genes express? So quite simply, epigenetics is the study of gene expression, and it's basically looking at the way that these genes start expressing themselves as a result of intrinsic, extrinsic factors without actually changing the underlying DNA sequence. And a perfect example of this is in twins. So you've got two twins, they're born obviously on the same day, same time, they come out looking the same, but because they have different life experiences, their gene expression actually differs over time, and they'll, start looking a little bit different from each other. One might be out in the sun all the time and one's, indoors, and they'll have different sets of, I guess, environmental aggressions or different factors that actually alter the way that, they age. And with epigenetics, it targets biological aspects rather than chemical ones. And it's been, an area of study for over a decade, really, in looking at how influences actually affect the way that the body ages.
Amazing. I've seen those. Oh, we've got so much to say. I know. I've seen those twin studies, and they're just incredible. It doesn't look like the same person, does it?
It is quite incredible. And I think until you actually see it, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. But when you actually see the pictures, it's like, okay, well, their DNA is the same, but obviously the way that they evolve is different. And I think that certainly that's an area that we as skin therapists can, have a little bit of specialization in, because we're working with the organ that is exposed to all of the elements.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in terms of our skin being exposed to those, what are some of the influences which does influence our epigenetics daily in our lifestyle?
Yeah, it's like, what aren't the factors?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, everything from diet, metabolism, free radicals, pollution, reactive oxygen species, exposure to chemicals, and it may not necessarily just be, like dishwashing detergents and all that type of thing, but also what we actually apply to our skin, whether it's too harsh, whether it's stripping, all of these factors, the way that the genes evolve, so they'll either, up or down regulate. And this is, of course, in addition to the sun, which, as we know in Australia, is a really, and it's not just ultraviolet, it's your high energy visible light, and it's, of course, your infrared radiation, which accounts for 54% of the radiation that comes from the sun that actually makes it to the skin. So I guess all of these factors have an effect, as well as, internal. So the hormonal system, what we're eating. I mean, there's a huge focus at the moment on nutrition and gut health and the link between the digestive system and the skin. All obviously determine the speed in which we age and the way in which our genes are expressed.
Yeah, incredible. You always hear about kind of facts that blow your mind. And the other day I heard about 60% of what you apply topically is actually absorbed into the skin. And when you think about how many chemicals, right from our body wash through to skincare, through to makeup, and then our cleaning products, that's quite a large amount that actually does enter into the skin.
100%. And, it's funny, there's a great article out there. It's called Chemical Reaction. And a gentleman by the name of Steve Herman wrote this about 5 years ago. That, contains coding information for about 20,000 genes.
Wow.
I mean, isn't that incredible? 20,000. And they can, I guess, direct the process for creating proteins, which are then the building blocks of all organisms. So it really is quite a fascinating area.
Yeah. I think that word too nowadays, decoding. I know Priori's just launched recently their Decoded, and I saw at the Beauty Expo this year there was a lot of that word decoded. That's really coming to be quite a trendy word now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I guess what we need to look at is, okay, well, yes, it's a trendy word, and yes, it makes sense that we talk about epigenetics, but can that product actually alter gene expression? I guess is it just a trendy thing or is it actually based on real proven science?
Yeah, incredible. So we were talking about there what on a daily basis influences our epigenetics, and we basically said all of the fun stuff. So drinking, going out in the sun.
And smoking. I mean, I don't smoke, but there's still smokers out there, all of that type of thing, all the fun stuff.
And so what can you advise our therapists to be giving their clients some lifestyle advice in terms of assisting their epigenetic function to be a healthy maintenance?
I mean, I think one of the biggest points is that the skin is a living organ of protection. It is an organ of the body. And whilst a lot of what we can do topically is going to have a beautiful effect on, I guess, the superficial levels of the skin, there can be no denying that, your internal factors are going to have a huge role to play in how you actually. I think talking about life and even just sleep patterns, I mean, there's a huge link between not getting quality enough sleep. There's a link to weight gain, and there's also a link to aging, and with stress. These are all affect the genes. I think, talking to your customers about, all right, well, limiting alcohol, trying to refrain from the smoking. I mean, you've got to be so careful when you're giving someone lifestyle advice. But I think just talking about epigenetics and I guess listing all of the factors that cause change to the gene. I mean, obviously a beauty therapist isn't a doctor and they're certainly not, a nutritionist or a naturopath, but I guess there's some generic advice that they can give. And certainly, I guess the biggest one is to protect the skin, and to protect the skin not just against the UV, but also the pollution, transepidermal water loss, reactive oxygen species, free radicals. there are some really advanced protective products out there on the market now that are actually, formulating with ingredients that are more broad spectrum than just ultraviolet protection.
Incredible. And so how does skincare and epigenetics interact?
Well, this is the interesting part of this conversation, really, isn't it? Actually, I'm looking at my notes, and I actually think with therapists talking, go over and focus on, the fact that we really do need to be educating the customers about effective cleansing. I know I said about protection, and that's so important. Cleansing off pollutants and impurities that have managed to latch onto the skin every single day. And, adopting a non-aggressive kind of resurfacing program or non-aggressive treatment protocol, because we know that aggression can send down a negative message to the basal layer, which can then, forward on to actually accelerate. Yes, there are a couple of other important points that a therapist, should talk about. But with regards to epigenetics and skincare, I mean, this is a new craze. It was in 2007. Dell submitted a trademark in the EU to be able to use, I think it was something like that in their marketing. There are some that basically say, look, all the commercial products claiming to use epigenetics are at best vague in describing the relevant science. Right. And I guess we've actually got to look at what a product would have to do to be able to modulate gene expression. The question about whether a topically applied product can actually penetrate of the epidermis across the lipid bilayer of the cell and into the cell to then locate the DNA, either maximize, repressed, or regulate excessive gene expression. So it's very, very unlikely that a topical product can do that.
Interesting.
When you actually look at the ingredients that are out there being dubbed as epigenetically active, based on the science of epigenetics, we're talking about commonly used ingredients. We're talking glycerin, hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, vitamin E, coenzyme Q10, niacinamide. I mean, these are all ingredients that have been recently quoted in the APAN journal by Tina Mader as being epigenetically active to increase gene expression. But in this case, you'd have to argue that every second product out there over the last, decade, 2 decades, I mean, glycerin, hyaluronic acid, they're not, new buzz ingredients.
No, you're right.
You'd have to argue that every second product could jump on this same bandwagon and claim to be based on epigenetics. I think also looking at the wording of a lot of the campaigns, I mean, there is some very clever spin out there, but, it doesn't really appear that anyone in their marketing campaign, in this clever wording, it doesn't appear that they're actually promoting that their products do what epigenetics to stimulate or alter gene expression. They apply that out, use the word epigenetics, but, the ingredients and the product benefits are really no different to the next product that isn't claiming.
Yeah, right. That's crazy, isn't it?
A marketing spin on old ingredients.
And I guess, it kind of...
the winner of the fun.
It brings me back, though, to the whole greenwashing, in which we spoke a little bit earlier on in the podcast with Mel Driver from Embalm Skincare. She was saying if you have a product that looks green, it might have a picture of a leaf on there, you use words like natural or antioxidizing, that product is being greenwashed to look safe and, without nasties, free from SLS, etc. And it's almost as if you had a product range, you had a white box, you had a little picture of a DNA stem, you wrote epigenetics on there. Clients can be very fooled.
It's funny. This isn't in any of our talking points, but I was just having a conversation with somebody and we were talking about antioxidation. And essentially, you could argue that you could cover your face in Glad wrap, right? You would never do this. No one do this. You could cover your face in Glad wrap and claim an antioxidant benefit, because essentially you're wrapping your face off to pollution and free radicals.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And I guess you can't really argue with that. I mean, is it good for the skin? Absolutely not.
No.
But yeah, look, I think, there's a quote on epigenetics, or what is epigenetics.com, and it says, when it comes to caring for it effectively, epigenetics may provide an answer. And I think that pretty much sums it up. We're very quick to jump on the bandwagon for something. Actually consider what epigenetics is all about. It's very, very unlikely that a topical product can actually change the way that our genes are expressed. There is a way, I know it's really the only way in which to get a whole molecule into the cell, without ever causing any cell damage or collateral damage, where it may have the chance of influencing the DNA. But this is by utilizing a delivery patent via a process of electroporation. And it's really the only process I know that can actually get an ingredient into the cell where it may have a chance to affect the DNA.
Incredible. So there are so many, there's so many influences to epigenetics that we have to think about. So number one, now we know what it is. We are influenced by something that could potentially change our genetic disposition every day through so many ways that we're just going about our normal daily lifestyle. So that means we really need to have a think about everything we do, right from the moment we wake up to the moment we go back to sleep, and how we could be potentially influencing those genes. And then taking a look at the skincare we're using, and especially as you were saying there, the cleansing situation, especially nowadays because of the pollution particles. So double cleansing is now more important than ever.
100%. Be nice, excuse me, it would be nice if we could just put on a miracle cream and, be wiped off 20 years. But I think regardless of spin, that is just not going to happen. It's not. And I think you're right, getting good sleep, wearing an element shield or a protector every day, double cleansing, avoiding cigarette smoke, even if it's side stream, not going home and drinking 2 bottles of wine every night. These are all factors that, of course, have an effect on the body, and the skin is an organ of the body. So of course it's going to show a change or an effect based on factors we're subject to.
Yeah. And I think if anybody's not seen the twin studies, I'm sure you could probably research that on Google and have a look at the difference between the twins. It stuns me every time. I probably see it every 3 years that I remember it, or that somebody else says, hey, have you seen this? And it's just incredible looking at the two. They look like different people, and the age difference, if you were to cover one of them and say, how old does this woman look? You could say 30. You have a look at the other one and you say, how old does this look? You could easily say, 45. It looks like 10, 15 years of difference between them.
Yeah, I mean, well, and even not in twins, you take someone in their 30s in Australia.
Yes.
And, compare that with a lady or a girl, whoever, in her 30s, maybe in Northern Europe or Scandinavia. And you'd all have a difference based on, environments.
Yeah. And I don't think the world is getting any more clean, are they?
Well, no, this is it. I mean, I guess in many ways we're lucky. In Australia, there are countries around the world that do have more pollution and whatnot. But I think that our environment, the sun, I mean, all of these things do compound. And I think stress is such a big factor as well. Stress really is, and the culture that we're subject to with phones and, Facebooks and Uber, like all of this, it's all just this instant gratification culture, and it can be very, very stressful for, ancient body, modern world type concept. So I think that these are the more important about, rather than, oh, here's our new serum and it's based on the science of epigenetics. I mean, really?
Yeah.
I think it is an effect and a protective effect,
Yeah, you're not wrong there. It was actually quite refreshing. So you and I first met each other at the Beauty Expo, and we were both sans phone because of our silly batteries. But it was actually quite nice to, just walk past you and say, I think that's who I'm meeting based on your face. And then I kept walking and I thought, no. And then I looked back and you were looking at me. And it was kind of nice to have that technology-free moment of connection.
It's true. It's true. Although I have to say I was a little bit your battery dies and you're meant to meet someone. I mean, and it's so silly because I remember when, I'd have to go and answer the landline. There was no mobile. You didn't know who was calling.
No.
And you certainly didn't know what they looked like. But yeah, I think that it is nice to kind of get back to basics and everything. I mean, technology is not going anywhere, but it was great that we knew what each other looked like. Definitely.
Yeah. And so how I first contacted you was that I saw you host your Facebook Live session on epigenetics, and I thought we need to pick your brains on the podcast so that everyone else can hear about it. Where can people go back and listen to that or hear more about your educational sessions?
Yeah, so on Facebook, so obviously I'm from SkinFaktor, but I created this little platform, I suppose, which is called Behind of SkinFaktor. And it's basically a platform for education. We talk about epigenetics, we've spoken about needling, communicable diseases and handling blood. I've had some guest speakers. So we cover lots areas that all affect the industry, but also, I guess, affect the way that someone can grow young. And that's really the philosophy of SkinFaktor. And we go live every Monday morning at 9:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, because I know that you've probably got a varied audience around the But all of the videos, or all of the broadcasts are recorded. So we've clocked up, I think, just over 30 episodes now. And yeah, you can go back in and rewatch anything that tickles your fancy.
Incredible. That sounds amazing. I know when I have a little hour or two free, perhaps when I'm traveling next, I will definitely jump on and have a look. And I just think, as I say in every single episode, knowledge is power and you can't learn enough.
100%. And I think what is so important, and it's certainly something I've learned in my career, is that you will always get told that something is a particular way by a particular. It's their belief, or it's what they're getting paid to tell you, whatever. I mean, I've worked for other brands as well, and I've run education programs for other brands, and I'll deliver that content. And I think it's really, really important as a beauty therapist, as a skin specialist within this industry, to take that information and don't necessarily discount it, but do your research, do your due diligence, actually critically analyze what you've been, and decide for yourself whether or not it's true or false. Because every supplier, every distributor is going to justify what they are doing, and that's fine. We all do that. But I think as a professional in the industry, you do definitely need to delve in deeper. And you're right, education is so, so important. And it's what's going to let you stand aside from the therapist down the road,
Yeah, you're 100% right there.
So the customers know when you're just spinning what that company wants you to spin. Do you know what I mean? I think really successful beauty therapists present the benefits of the product, but to add value in from a generic pool of knowledge into that prescription. Feel like they're just reading the back of the product to the customer. The customer line, and you can Google everything that your beauty therapist has told you and work out whether it's true or false.
Yeah, and they do, and they come in and they are very savvy.
They are savvy, and we're in a situation where in some cases the consumer knows more than the professional, and that is not a good it's not a good place to be. So I think it's fantastic that you're doing these podcasts on lots of different topics, and there is a lot of education that's being put out there for free that you can obviously use to grow your generic pool of knowledge.
Yeah, incredible. And I hope every therapist or senior therapist, manager, whatever you are, I hope you listen to that. And, I say it every single week that we need to enhance our knowledge, but hopefully coming from a different mouth, it might fall on different ears.
Perhaps.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for joining us today. I'm sure all of our audience, now advanced skin therapists, will absolutely love this podcast.
I do hope so. And I just want to thank you, Tamara, for having me on board today. It's been very exciting doing it. It's my first podcast.
I know, that's so exciting. We should have filmed it. Perfect. Well, we will leave it there for you today, and we will definitely link all of the SkinFaktor and everything Danielle does behind the scenes of SkinFaktor, and all of her work and all of her podcast. Oh, well, not her podcast, but her online live sessions, so that you guys can have a link and have a look at those. As always, if you have enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and feel free to give us a 5-star rating or leave a little review and tell Danielle what you think of this podcast today. I'm sure you will all love it. Don't forget to follow us on all of the social channels, Facebook, Instagram. You guys know where we are. I say it every week. And if you haven't, jump on the Beauty Industry website and create a member profile and start chatting with industry experts of the likes of Danielle. Until next time, stay connected. Thanks for tuning in to episode 20. Can you believe we're already at episode 20? Where does the time go? Next week for episode 21, we are speaking with Lisa Dawson from The Uniform Stylist on how she creates bespoke, gorgeous uniforms for the beauty industry. You're going to love it. Be sure to tune in next Monday. Until next time, stay connected.